So the next part of this presentation, we'll look at some great alternative materials, their applications, and their eco-benefits. Some of the most popular materials on the market today are linen, tencel, recycled polyester and bamboo, cork, recycled wool, organic cotton, and hemp. So, in judging the overall fabric, we've compiled our own scoring system at Green Story to take into account some crucial elements when trying to pick a green fabric. We've judged these out of each on a category out of 5, with 1 being its lowest. So we've taken into account the amount of CO2 emissions released into the environment from cultivation up until the fabric production. And we've created a star rating by doing a life cycle assessment, including all of the resources that are needed at these stages. 5 stars here would be a fabric under 10 kilograms of CO2 for every kilogram created. 4 stars is 10 to 20 kilograms, and 3 stars is 20 to 30 kilograms. Luckily, none of these materials have less than 3 stars. And one of the key points in favor of green fabrics is that they save significant amount of water compared to conventional materials. Some are better than others, of course, so we've taken this into account, with 5 stars being a fabric that needs less than 75 liters of water, 4 stars when it needs between 76 and 300 liters of water, and 3 stars up until 500 liters. And while campaigning for green being our #1 goal, we also understand that price is a big factor for brands when choosing materials. So when keeping this in mind, we've judged each fabric on its relation of cost compared to cotton, with 5 stars being almost as cheap as cotton. Also, the proximity of your production to your warehouse is an important factor, as we've seen earlier in this presentation. Therefore, we've taken a North American perspective, and we looked at how accessible sourcing this material is and whether manufacturing is possible outside of major fabric production hubs. And lastly, there is an other category. This is kind of an umbrella category where all of the pros and cons were put that didn't fit in other categories, just to give a more holistic view of the materials. So let's take a look at some materials. Firstly, we have linen. So linen is a natural and biodegradable fabric made from flax plants. It's primarily used as a substitute for cotton for shirts and dresses in summer garments. Linen's great qualities are that it's minimal use of water and its availability, which gives it 5 stars, or rather here, 5 leaves. So flax crops are highly resilient and can grow in poor soils, meaning that they need far less irrigation than other crops. This material has been around for thousands of years, and it's available worldwide, making it great for local production. Although the most yarn and the least impactful linen comes from France or Belgium. However, because it's such a sturdy plant, it's more difficult to manufacture and leads to more waste in production, resulting in slightly more emissions. This difficulty in production also leads to its downside, the cost, as it's often dubbed a luxury fabric. But it's grown without the use of toxic fertilizers and pesticides, it's very high yielding, and most brands actually decide to leave this fabric in its natural tone, without the dyeing stage. So now let's look at a slightly newer material on the market, Tencel. So Tencel, now called Tencel Lyocell, is relatively new, as it was invented by Lenzing in Austria 40 years ago. This material comes from the pulp of trees and is comparable to rayon or viscose and modal in terms of its physical characteristics. This is a fantastic fiber when it comes to water, emissions, and just an overall material. The production process is actually designed with sustainability in mind, making it highly efficient, low waste, and having minimal impact. Also, it only needs about 1/3 of the water compared to viscose, and it captures, recycles, and reuses over 99% of water and all of its non-toxic solvents that is used. Its weaker points are that it's relatively high priced because of this eco-friendly production, and it's not available as widely yet compared to other materials, or I guess other green alternatives. But Tencel Lyocell has great overall qualities. It's from certified and controlled forests, it uses only non-toxic chemicals, it's biodegradable and recyclable, and it has a silk-like feel, although it's more durable than cotton and linen. So let's look at another fabric, and this in the cellulosic family, just like Tencel, and that is bamboo. Bamboo fabric is often used also instead of viscose or rayon. This is very popular for towels and beddings, as well as t-shirts and dresses because it's super soft. Bamboo fabric is made from the stems and leaves of moso bamboo plants, which is technically a grass, and it grows at a much quicker rate compared to any other cellulosic-based material. And because of this, it's very high yielding as well. Its pros is that it uses bamboo grass over trees, which makes it better than viscose for CO2 emissions, and it needs less water. But the rest of the process of turning it into a fabric is the exact same as rayon, which still requires chemicals and water to turn it into yarn. And so it leaves this category at 4 stars. Its core is quite low on availability because the plant is only able to grow in China and Taiwan, but price-wise, it's the same as viscose and only slightly higher than cotton. As well, it's strong, durable, and great for moisture absorption. It's pest resistant, so there's no need for pesticides or herbicides, and it's also fast growing, so it doesn't need fertilizers, although some suppliers do opt to use them. Now, let's turn towards recycling and take a look at recycled polyester. So, recycled polyester, or rPET for short, falls under the synthetic family of fabrics. It's used as a green alternative to polyester, and with very good reason. So right now, there's more than 62 million tons of polyester produced annually. That's 49% of the global fiber production. It's made most often from post-consumer plastic water bottles. There we go. And it takes about 5 bottles to create 1 t-shirt. If you're looking for a cheap and widely available sustainable alternative, this is a material that you'll be interested in. It's slightly more expensive than polyester, but it's on par with cotton. It has slightly less emissions than polyester because it bypasses the petroleum extracted needed to make polyester, but it only gets 3 stars because of its recycling process that needs to break down the plastic and convert it back to yarn. rPET's main benefits, though, are that it recycles plastic trash and prevents new polyester from being made. It saves 35% on water compared to polyester. But of course, it has the downside that it is a synthetic fabric, so it will release microfibers during the wash and use phase. Now, let's turn to a more natural recycled material, recycled wool. So, recycled fabrics in general are much better than new fabrics because they avoid the often most intensive part, the raw material production, as we've seen in rPET. But for wool, this means that it bypasses the most environmentally harmful stage, the sheep raising, and the scouring process, which recycled wool actually only needs to be mechanically broken down again, which releases very little emissions and needs almost no water. As well, recycled natural fibers, wool as well as recycled cotton, don't need to be re-dyed, and so it also avoids the CO2 and water impacts. Its only downside for recycled wool is that it's not available worldwide yet. It has a few specialized hubs in Italy and India, but it does well for price because it is cheaper than new garments, making it a new wool garment, making it a great way for brands to start incorporating wool into their products. So let's talk a little bit about cork. This material is not often known to be sustainable, but it is one of the least impactful materials. Cork is ultra light, ultra durable, and it's used as a leather alternative for accessories like bags and wallets, and also for shoes. It's made from the bark of trees without cutting them down, which actually makes the tree absorb 2 to 3 times more CO2 compared to non-harvested trees. It also does well on water, but it is still used a little bit for processing the bark, so it does leave it at 4 stars. Its only downsides are that it's not as available because it is only grown in the Western Mediterranean area and the Iberian Peninsula, making it a little bit more pricey. But it is worth it because it does great in the other category. It's waterproof, hypoallergenic, it's recyclable and fully traceable, and it has virtually no waste. As well, it is completely toxic-free, even in its sealant and dyeing. And so now, let's talk a bit about organic cotton. So organic cotton is the most widely known eco-fabric used on the market today. It's great because it has all the characteristics from cotton, but it leaves out all of the pesticides and intensive water usage. It releases 46% less CO2 emissions than cotton and also uses about 85% less irrigation water compared to cotton. But this also, of course, depends on the region. So there are some countries that use a little bit more irrigation for their organic cotton, while others only use rain-fed water. It also scores well in terms of price, as it's relatively cheaper compared to other sustainable alternatives, although it is slightly more expensive than cotton because the cultivation has a lower yield, as well as organic cotton should be certified, so everyone knows that it's organic cotton. However, it is widely available. It's available on every continent in 35 different countries, making it great also for local production. And now to switch to our last material, hemp. This fabric has been used for thousands of years, and it's made from cannabis sativa fiber, otherwise known as industrial hemp. It's used in anything from towels, kitchen linens, as well as apparel like t-shirts, dresses, and hoodies. It's a bit of a tougher material, but it's often blended with organic cotton to soften it up. Hemp is a very quick growing crop. It's actually much faster growing than weeds, and it doesn't require much irrigation water. But it doesn't get a full 5 stars or leaves here because of its degumming process, which does require some water. Also, this degumming process is also the reason why it has a lower score on CO2 emissions. Hemp's best traits, though, are its overall physical properties and characteristics. And that is that it's the strongest natural fiber after spider silk. And it's the best natural fiber for antibacterial properties, making it great for bedding and towels. As well, it's a natural CO2 sink, which removes more CO2 per hectare than any forest or other commercial crop. Unfortunately, most countries are still very strict on growing it, but it's not, and for this reason, I guess it's not also available in very many countries, making it more expensive. But if you do opt for this material, it is often can be blended with organic cotton to bring down the cost and also make it a little bit more workable. And so now that I've gone through some of the most popular alternatives on the market, deciding which material works best for your brand also depends on a couple different things. And that is, what are your material needs? What type of garment are you producing? A bathing suit company will require very different materials, of course, than a bedding company. As well, where are you located? Based on your warehouse and customers, what materials make sense for you to be in closer proximity with? And lastly, which impacts are you trying to tackle? As we talked about at the beginning of this presentation, your switch towards sustainable fabric should also be tackling some of the main issues you currently have in your supply chain. So here are the 3 big takeaways. Firstly, trace your supply chains. Secondly, find out where your biggest impacts are within your supply chain. And third, switch to sustainable alternatives for your material issues. There are a few sources that can help you with this, and I've listed here a few of them. Firstly, turn towards the Higg Material Sustainability Index for getting an overview of your impacts throughout your supply chain. As well, check out Textile Exchange for finding reliable sourcing and suppliers. And also make sure to check out Green Story's own ebooks for more in-depth look at topics such as this one. So thank you everyone for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation.